creating profitable campaigns on Amazon sponsored products. Now, we've had a couple of discussions about this, and we continue to get requests to do so. So we're excited to dig deep and get into it right now. So, as a reminder, I'm your host. My name is Andy Coughlin. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Teikametrics, and just excited as always to have a roundtable discussion. We'll be fielding questions as we typically do, and hopefully imparting as much knowledge as we can. So around the table today, we've got a very handsome crew, a very handsome, very smart crew. So maybe starting with ladies first.
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Kessler, and I am one of the e-commerce experts over here at Teikametrics.
Hi, everyone. This is Joe Doobie on the Teikametrics side. Happy to be joining you today.
Hey, everyone. This is Mike Indegaro. Excited to be here as well.
Awesome. So I just wanted to dive right into the agenda. So starting off, we're going to talk about campaign objectives and profitability. Next, we'll hit on campaign creation and establishing your foundation for success. We'll then go through best practices for optimization and your ongoing maintenance, and then leave you with some key takeaways. So let's dive right in with campaign objectives.
Yeah, and I can get us started. Hi, everyone. This is Alex once again. This section is about choosing the products you want to advertise. And it's a question that we get all the time. I know a lot of sellers that I work with may currently only be advertising a portion of their portfolio. I commonly see people advertising SKUs that they think should be converting well, but in reality, they may not be, or that's just simply conjecture, not backed up by facts or any data. And if you choose to only advertise a portion of your catalog, you could really be missing out if you're limiting yourself to, all extra profits in your pocket based on some of this unintentional bias you may have. So this is why we recommend being as product agnostic as possible and advertising your entire catalog. And the reason why is sponsored products should be a core part of your strategy for your entire company, your whole FBA business. And Amazon itself is very, very capitalistic. They want everyone to be using sponsored products. So if you're not advertising that SKU, your competitor most likely is. And as a result, you're going to be the one missing out on the extra real estate in the marketplace that your competitors are leveraging.
And one question we get a lot of is, will my advertisements be pushing to other people's listings? And the answer there is no. So you're only eligible for impressions through sponsored products if you're currently in the buy box.
Right, and even furthermore there, using sponsored products is so important for your entire catalog because it allows you to show up in search, but also on your competitors' listings. And that's something that's impossible to do otherwise or organically. So that's why we definitely recommend advertising all of your products. From there, you can make the decision to continue investing after evaluating all of the performance based on big data that is proven, it's true, and rather than relying on that subjective bias.
So before we dive into the next slide, I think we have a quick poll to get a feel from the audience. Alex, you want to kick that off?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question that we're a bit curious over here about is, let me launch it. Why are you all using sponsored products? Is it to launch new SKUs? Are you simply looking to drive incremental revenue for your top performers? Perhaps increase sales for your age inventory? Or maybe you're not even currently using sponsored products.
And you can feel free to select all that apply to you. We'll let that run for a couple more seconds. Go ahead and close it.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll close it out right now. So yeah, thanks for participating in that, you guys. Let me share the results.
So really interesting here that we're seeing a majority of people are using sponsored products to drive incremental sales for their top sellers, but not quite as many people are taking advantage of it for product launches or helping to aid with aged inventory. So it sounds like there could be an opportunity there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So with that, let's dive into what we call activity-based campaigns, and that's setting up your campaigns. So once you've decided which products to advertise, how do you organize that? And with activity-based campaigns, there's a couple of different options here. So if you're doing a product launch, you're really investing in data from Amazon. And I can't really stress that enough, is that there's a lot of noise out there in terms of what keywords should I use and all of those types of questions, but the real data is what's important. And when you're launching a product and setting up your initial campaigns, don't look at that as a marketing cost. Look at that as an investment into that data from Amazon where you can really research and explore. And by setting up the campaign for a specific activity, you can determine your budgets and access and set and set your thresholds for ACOS based on that objective. Another common objective we hear is turning over inventory. So this is a great short-term strategy when you're looking down the barrel at those long-term storage fees and you're trying to get some slow movers going through sales and improve the rank there. So again, this may be the case where you have a higher threshold for ACOS because you're willing to make that investment in marketing to get those products moving. And then the last one here that we've identified is profitability. So this is where you'd be executing with clear ACOS targets to supplement your organic sales. And this is where you have the opportunity, again, as Alex alluded to show up on your competitors' products pages, to show up in other locations on mobile and in search, where you just aren't showing up organically and you're adding those sales incrementally to your organic sales.
Yeah. Go ahead, Andy.
Oh, I was just gonna add a couple things. The first is thank everybody once again for jumping in on the polls. It just is helpful for us to keep the discussion going. And I think Mike, you had some questions that came in from the audience.
Yeah. So along the lines of profitability, and Joe, you had mentioned, and Alex had mentioned about, be product agnostic and try to advertise as much as possible. And the question is, won't advertising the entire catalog increase our overall costs? And of course, yes, your cost is going to increase, but think of sponsored products as an investment and what is that return going to be like from a sales perspective? And that brings us to kind of the next slide about understanding the impacts to profitability. So you are going to be spending more, but you want to be spending more on those campaigns that have a target that is much lower than your GM. And that's going to allow you to take that cost that you're investing in the business and get a much larger return. So don't think of sponsored products as just a sunk cost. There's a couple of different scenarios we've laid out here. With product launch, you may have a higher threshold for ACOS. Therefore, you're going to be spending more, maybe up to gross margin to break even. Whereas profitability over time, if you are looking to add that incremental value that sponsored products allows you to do, you want to understand what your margin is so that you are spending below that threshold. So maybe in this example, your gross margin is $30 per unit. Having an ACOS of below 30% is going to bring in profitable sales that come from sponsored products. So it's a very fine balance.
And the other point too is you want to take a step back and not look at sponsored products in a bubble, right? How does it fit into your overall business? So while you may see a campaign that's running a 15% ACOS, if sponsored products are accounting for 20% of all of your sales, that means you're only spending 3% of total sales on marketing. So having that clear understanding of your P&L and where this SP spend fits is really important and will help define your objectives and really help you hone in on a target. So let's dive into campaign structure. We talked about how you should be advertising all of your products, making sure you're grouping those around different activities and objectives. So what does that actually look like?
Right. And I think this is probably one area that people forget the importance about is the necessity to structure your campaigns, in order to configure for long-term success. And a lot of people that I work with are throwing all of their products into one campaign or one ad group. And in order to keep costs low and get the best return on your investment, regardless of if you're launching a new product or trying to drive profitability, You need to set up your campaigns so that in the long run, you're successful successful in driving that incremental revenue or launching your product. So,
and it's all about making it easier on yourself, right?
Is
making this investment into setting things up is going to make it a lot simpler as you go to manage these accounts.
Yeah, and it will also drive the most relevant traffic to your listings, and I think that that's really important. So let's just go through this, right? So first and foremost, we recommend that you categorize your products by thinking of a website navigation bar. That's probably the easiest way to think about this. So if you are setting up a website, even if you're reselling goods, then you want to focus on those big overarching commonalities between your products. So you can begin by categorizing perhaps by brand or product line or product type. So if you sell apparel, for instance, maybe you want to break it down by shirts and pants and jackets. And then from there, we mentioned those business objectives. And this is what's crucial, I think, is one of the most important things is that you want to break down those categories by your business objectives. So for instance, let's take this raincoats category that we have here as an example. You may have different goals for different types of rain jackets, and you don't want to be throwing all of those into the same campaign. Instead, break those down so you can hit those different ACOS thresholds. So for instance, your best-selling raincoats example would be used primarily to drive incremental revenue and would have a different ACOS threshold than your new raincoats, in which you would be willing to take a higher ACOS to get that exposure on your products.
And this is so important and often overlooked is if you just throw all of the same category into the same campaign, you can't effectively manage bids and keywords to be targeting a specific goal. So having it broken down by that additional activity underneath each category, you can really hone in on hitting that objective and making sure that your new and your best selling are all separate.
Exactly. And from there, we recommend segmenting everything down even further into different ad groups. So this is really important. I know I get a lot of questions about, how many products should I have in my ad group? If I have different product lines or different variations, should I put them all in one ad group? And the answer is, honestly, it depends, right? So you definitely don't want to put a whole big grouping of products into one ad group, because at that point, you would find that some SKUs would perhaps be getting a lot of traction. Other SKUs would maybe be getting limited because Amazon's going to put the product that converts the best in front of the sellers, right? So Joe, maybe you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you see a product that's sucking up a lot of the budget, you can put that into its own campaign and ad group and then have a separate one featured on those ones that are slow movers and that won't be as popular, and you can turn some budget in there.
Yeah, and a point that I wanted to make, Joe, was that this is a continuous process too. Like Joe said, you want to be constantly evaluating the data and the spend that's coming through, so then you can pivot and say, okay, well now I need to shift around some of these SKUs into more refined campaigns because they're taking up more of the spend. So it's all about balance when it comes to sponsored products and making sure that your objectives align with not only profitability, but the approach that you're trying to take.
Right. And an easy way to do this that not a lot of people take advantage of, in my opinion, is to group your products after gaining some insight into how people are actually searching for them and are, clicking on them using your ads. And you do that by using the search term report. So if you guys aren't familiar, this is a report within Seller Central that will give you insight into every single customer search term that was typed into Amazon search bar that resulted in at least one click. So this is really important because these are what people are truly typing into Amazon. You want to make sure that you're breaking down your products based on that big data, based on the facts. So you may be under the impression that people are searching based on color, but in reality, they could be searching based on size or product line or brand. And in order to capitalize and drive the most relevant traffic, you truly need to know how people are searching for your product.
And one other point here on ad group creation, Mike, we see a lot is that people ask, am I competing with myself if I have the same product, or I'm bidding on the same keyword in multiple ad groups? What's your take there?
Yeah, so you're never gonna compete against yourself per se. At the end of the day, Amazon's gonna take that customer search term and map it to the best possible keyword that's gonna get that customer to purchase a product as quickly as possible. So if you have same keywords in different ad groups, different SKUs in different ad groups, all that doesn't matter. What matters is what is the product that's going to get into the consumer's hands the fastest, and it's possibly going to be at the lowest cost per click to you. So it is a pretty foolproof system that Amazon has set up for you all.
Right, so you won't be bidding up against yourself.
Correct.
So a question that comes up, just for the group, is, okay, I'm paying for advertising, but I don't actually pay for it unless I win the buy box. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
You're not even eligible for impressions. So your ad won't even show up if you're not in the buy box.
Yeah, so if you are a reseller, there really is no harm in going through the motions of creating campaigns and advertising all your products, because you're only going to get clicks, impressions, spend, and sales when you're actually in the buy box.
So now, once we've established our campaigns, we've built our ad groups underneath there, you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of both automatic and manual campaigns. So we've held a series of webinars over the past couple of months talking about sponsored products that you can reference back to if you want more of the basics in terms of what is automatic versus manual. But the key here is to set up your campaigns in a mirrored structure, so that for every automatic campaign, you have a corresponding manual campaign with the same set of ad groups and the same SKUs under each one. And by doing this simple action, you're going to make it really easy for yourself when you're finding new keywords through the automatic campaigns. That's why we call it explore and exploit. So with automatics, Amazon is matching customer search terms to your products, and there's going to be new data coming in all of the time. So we always recommend to have an auto and a manual campaign running. If you don't, you're giving up on the exploring side and capturing new keywords. And what you're able to do, and we're going to go through specific examples of how to do this, is take those winners from the automatic side, move them over to manual. And if you've spent the time to create a structure that's really easy to understand, it's going to be super easy to know where that goes. And that will allow you to bid at the keyword level. So on automatic campaigns, you're only bidding at the whole ad group, and all search terms have that same max bid. But if you find something that works really well, you don't want to be constrained by that ad group level bid on the automatic side. You want to move it over to manual and be able to really dial that up and exploit those top performers and really pour money into them. So we have a tip here in terms of bulk processing. So we realize that Seller Central can be tough to navigate in some aspects, and really hard to get consistency and accuracy if you're building out a lot of campaigns for a lot of SKUs. So what do we have here, Mike?
You really have to take advantage of the bulk features that Amazon gives to you, and it's time saving. It allows you to be consistent with the information. And I know you're all sitting there thinking, wow, I have to create an automatic and manual campaign for each of my objectives. There's multiple ad groups. There is no better way to do that through the bulk upload. You're going to save time, and I think the biggest part with creating a bulk upload is that consistency of information. So imagine trying to create 3 or 4 automatic campaigns with several ad groups, and then memorizing what you just did and then doing it again manually in Seller Central.
Right. So I know people want to spend as little time as possible during their days in Excel, but this is an opportunity for you to really gain some efficiencies, and being able to set this up and copy and paste makes it a lot simpler for that repeatable, consistent approach.
Yeah, and the other point to make with utilizing the bulk operations report, the bulk file report, is it does have a processing report that when you do upload this back into Seller Central, it's going to catch any of the errors or the inconsistencies that you may find, which you're not going to be able to get when doing it manually. what you're looking at now is an export of an example that we've put together. When you download this report, it's completely blank, but you can see what we're doing here is creating a manual campaign and then mirroring it to be an automatic campaign. And it's really as simple as going through creating this campaign once and then copy and pasting it below and just changing the terminology from manual to automatic. And it's really easy. All you have to do is hit the button now to upload it as a CSV, and it's there in Seller Central.
Right. So instead of wasting hours in Seller Central doing the campaign creation, you can do it in one fell swoop here with the upload.
Right.
Awesome. Great tip. So now we've talked about campaign creation, how to set that up, using explore and exploit, both automatic and manual, taking advantage of that bulk operations upload. We're now going to dive into maintaining profitable campaigns, so what you should be doing each week. But first, we wanted to hit the audience with another poll.
Right. So this question, we simply want to know, what do you all find to be most confusing about sponsored products? Are you more concerned with setting up campaigns or discovering new keywords? What do you find to be the most confusing? So we'll let this run.
Yeah, give it some time here, because I think last time we had about 70% of the audience participate. I mean, it's so helpful, right? Give it just maybe another 30 seconds here.
Definitely.
Yeah. We've got some good questions that are coming in too, so
Right.
you guys let us know when the best time is to address some of those after we get to the poll.
Yeah, I mean, we can go through some of the questions that we have as soon as we launch this, because there are some really good ones in there too. We'll let this run for like 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Get your answers in there. Closing it. Here we go. Share results.
All right, so this we were talking about this poll right before the webinar started, and we were like, it's kind of a dumb question, because all of this is confusing, and that's what you guys are telling us as well, is that all of the above can be confusing. The second most confusing item is adjusting bids, and that's interesting, because you do see Amazon has a suggestion in there in Seller Central, and that's a range now that they're showing you to get onto the first page. But what we're going to talk through is the value of adjusting your bids based on prior performance. So informing your bidding strategy based on your objective, and then how has that actually worked for you. So in some cases, it may not be worth it to take that high expensive bid that Amazon is suggesting for you. In other cases, it may make sense to be a lot higher.
And Joe, before we go into the meat of maintaining profitable campaigns, I do want to answer a couple of questions. I think one is really interesting to me. This person is asking about when they are exploiting keywords and adding them to manual campaigns, or even refining some of the targeting that we're going to go into. They want to know, do I have to pause that keyword or that ad group so that I'm not kind of competing against myself there? How does it, I know we mentioned it, but can we clarify?
Yeah, absolutely. We recommend continuing to let those run on the automatic side or as broad keywords, because they're going to continue to serve up new suggestions for you. So if it's delivering you sales at a rate that's underneath your ACOS threshold, you don't want to stop the spend there. So we recommend continuing to let those run and gathering new data as that comes in.
Perfect.
Awesome. So maintaining profitable campaigns. So here's our playbook, and we've established this over the past year, really working with a lot of clients, hundreds of clients here in our team of experts, establishing what works best. So number one, you want to reduce inefficient spend. And we're going to go through each of these in more detail, but at the highest level, you don't want to be spending money on keywords and search terms that aren't delivering sales. Even if that search term is related to your product, if it's not delivering sales, you're just throwing money away. Number two is capitalizing on top performers. So once you've eliminated that waste, you want to continue to capitalize or exploit those top performers. So moving things from automatic to manual so you can adjust those bids at the keyword level. And then your work's not done there. So once you're in manual campaigns, you want to continue to refine the targeting, move from broad to phrase and phrase to exact, and really use that search term report to see what those longer tail terms are that are being served against your broad and phrase keywords. And as you get more and more targeted, you're going to be able to adjust those bids at that really targeted level and make sure that if there's a longer tail term that you always win on, you never want to miss an opportunity for an impression or a click if you know that term's going to convert into a sale. And then layered on top of all of this, and the feedback we just got back from you guys is this can be the most confusing, is continuous bid adjustments. So don't simply get too distracted by the keyword side of things. It's also important to really manage your bids each week and make those adjustments based on performance to ensure you're not overspending on some keywords or underspending on something where you could be getting a lot more from. So let's dive in with reducing inefficient spend.
Right, so this is our first step, and the goal here is to obviously decrease your inefficient spend. And the way that we can go about doing that at first is by adding negative keywords. So we often see sellers bidding on any keyword that they think will convert or should convert well, but simply aren't performing. And of course, there's an art and a science to sponsored products. Sometimes you may want to add a negative keyword. Other times it may be worth it for you to let this run for exposure, but we have written here, we recommend that you add anything that's generated significant spend with no sales over the last 60 days. And this quote unquote significant is pretty ambiguous because we kind of leave it up to your discretion, right? So it's entirely dependent on your business objectives, of which we've honed in on it a bit quite frequently today. So for some campaigns, $5 in spend with no sales may be significant. But for others, if they're more growth oriented or looking to launch a new product, you may be more conservative and add keywords as negative search terms if they've generated maybe $15 or $20. So
and what we see here is this is a cutout from an example search term report, and what you can do is exactly what Alex talked about, is sort this by spend and sort it by some stuff with no sales. And the examples here that we're highlighting, we have one rain poncho. So this is from an automatic campaign, and you've spent $70 on it and it hasn't generated an order. So it could be that a rain poncho is something that's not quite relevant to your higher end raincoat and you want to stop the spend there. So you would add that customer search term as a negative keyword for that ad group.
And Joe, just a quick point. What about, those sellers that are very passionate about their search terms and they want to continue getting impressions for something like rain poncho?
Sure.
Is it worth it?
So there's a risk you're playing there too. Is one of the things that Amazon will look at in terms of ranking you is your conversion rate. So if you're generating a lot of traffic to your page that's not resulting in sales, that can be a negative. So if you have, for this example, where you see rain poncho, there's been 204 clicks with 0 sales. So that's not doing your business any good because it's telling Amazon that your product doesn't convert at a high rate. You're sending traffic there and not picking up sales.
Really quick, guys. So I've had a few people write in asking what ACOS is. And great question. We should have probably explained exactly what it was right at the beginning. And it stands for advertising cost of sales. So it's simply calculated by taking your total spend divided by your total sales for that keyword or ad group, etc. So thanks so much for writing in. Yeah, so that's what it stands for.
Yeah, and the advantage of the metric of ACOS is that it's you can see it as a line item in your P&L. So if you know that your cost of goods is 50% and then you see your ACOS is 20%, it sort of aligns with those other line items in your P&L.
Yeah, we have another good question too from Laura. So she asks, once you take a good performing keyword and create a manual campaign, do you remove the keyword from the auto campaign by making it negative? Or should you add it as a negative exact or a negative phrase?
So no, we don't recommend doing that. I think I touched on this earlier with the question Mike sent over, was if it's generating sales for you at an ACOS that's below your target, there's no real need to turn that off. It's going to continue to work for you. And then just getting back to this second example here is you don't want to look at negative keywords just for your automatic campaigns. We've found that you can make a broad keyword or a phrase keyword a lot more efficient on the manual side if you're looking at all of the search terms that are being served against that. So you can see in this second example that's highlighted in red, rain jackets for men, that's being served against the broad keyword rain jackets. But you'll also notice it's in the ad group children's raincoats. So it's not highly relevant because it's rain jackets for men. So by adding the term rain jackets for men as a negative in that ad group, you'll let the rain jackets broad keyword get a lot more efficient because you're cutting out that waste.
Would you add it as a negative exact or a negative phrase?
So for this case, I would add that as a negative exact. So I want to take that exact statement out. But if there were terms where you wanted to add a negative for like another brand, say Patagonia here in this example, if I wanted to add that as a negative, I could take that and use that as a negative phrase so that I wouldn't have to go in and add every single Patagonia raincoat, Patagonia men's raincoat, every variation there. I could eliminate by using the negative phrase term.
Right, and I know that a lot of sellers that we work with are conservative when adding negative keywords to manual campaigns, and like Joe was saying, it's easy to eliminate those so you can reallocate your funds towards what is working really well and start investing in those high performers.
So question about that. So we talk about that often in terms of moving, doing the kind of the broad search and automatic and then going into manual and doubling down.
Yep.
But like, okay, $500, $1,000. How do you test? I mean, I know there's not a right answer, but like, I think the process is right, but how do you know when you say double down, what does that mean?
Yeah, great question. I mean, that's exactly what step 2 is here of the playbook is it's capturing those top performers. So when you do find those terms that are working well for you, creating them on the manual side, you have more control now because you can bid at that keyword level and you have your daily budget at the campaign level. So you can have a higher daily budget set on your manual side because you know exactly what you're bidding on. So if you want to be more conservative on the automatic side and have a lower daily budget and then take out those winners, move it over to manual and turn up your budget, that's a great strategy. And we always recommend that you never let your budget constrain your growth. So if you're delivering on ACOS at or below your target, so if you decide that you want to hit a 20% or less ACOS and you're running your campaign and it's at a 15% ACOS, but you're running out of budget during the day, that simply means you're stopping impressions, clicks, and sales from happening. And we recommend that you never let that happen. Never let that budget constrain your growth. So the steps here on number 2 are capturing those top performers. So we've talked about this, and it's the best source of that keyword data is those automatic campaigns. It's not some external tool. It's using Amazon search term data through the automatic side and converting those over to the manual. And by continuously doing this, you're ensuring that you're not going to miss out on relevant impressions, clicks, and sales. And the advantage, again, that we talked about is that the ad group on the automatic side is limited by your default bid. When you move it over to manual, you have the flexibility to turn those bids up on what's working well for you. So here's that example again. So here you see Patagonia raincoat for the women's raincoat ad group has delivered 7.67% ACOS. So spending $76 to generate just under $1,000 in sales. So that's been a productive term for you. So you want to ensure that you can bid on that more and put more money behind it. So you would make that customer search term a manual search term, a manual keyword. Another example you see down here is women waterproof jacket. So that one, it has much fewer impressions and clicks, but it has a really high conversion rate. So you'll notice it only has 400 impressions compared to 63,000. But of the 3 people that have clicked it, 2 people have purchased it. So that indicates that it's a highly relevant term that's going to convert well for you. And the last thing you want is to be missing out on impressions and clicks on those terms that you know are going to convert well. So that's, again, the advantage of using the search term report, identifying these winners, and moving them over to the manual side.
And Joe, what's the impact? I'm seeing a couple here in this example. What is the impact of ASIN showing up in the search term report?
Yeah, that's a great question. So another advantage of the automatic campaigns, in addition to using that explore strategy, is that it's the only way that you can show up on a competitor's product page. So imagine how powerful that is. Someone is browsing a competitor's product and they see your product on that page under the sponsored products related to this item, and they click on your product and you capture that sale and steal it from your competitor. So that's where you see the ASINs in the customer search term report. Unfortunately, you can't add that as a negative or add them as manual keywords, so the automatic campaign is the only way to show up on competitor product pages.
So, Joe, excellent. And I think this is the fun of doing these roundtables, is that we're just getting so many good questions from the group. So we're trying to answer the questions online in real time as well. A good one that came up from Alvar is, what's a good CTR or click-through rate percentage on a sponsored keyword? And what would you consider a good conversion rate on that traffic?
Yeah, great question. And I mean, this is where you're going to be able to learn as you look at this data. I see click-through rates that range from 0.25% up to 2%. Obviously, the higher, the better. The really strong terms are going to be towards that 2%. Overall, I wouldn't be surprised if you're seeing something in the 0.2% range. So there are a lot of impressions to clicks, but the more you can identify the conversion rate winners, the better.
Yeah, and 1 to 3% is the standard. So don't be discouraged if you don't see any above 3%. It's very rare that you have a click-through rate that high, because if you just look at the amount of clicks you're getting to those impressions. It is a massive ratio.
Right.
Don't we think, though, that isn't, I mean, I personally think that your ACOS is probably a more important thing to look at, because even with the limited clicks, some of these are converting really, really well. So I think that perhaps is more important to look at if you're going to be evaluating your profitability.
Right. Yeah. ACOS is an important one. And then just keeping in mind, as you're only paying for clicks, right? It's a pay per click program. So as you generate those clicks, it is important to see how many actually turn into sales. And that's where you get ACOS, is how much are you spending divided by how much are you getting in sales.
Once you move from automatic to manual, the work it's never going to stop there, right? You're always going to find new opportunities to refine your keyword match types. Because of that power of the search term report, and you really want to capture what is the customer actually searching and then inform that to create new keywords. The example here, you start at the automatic campaign level. The customer has searched women's raincoat. We're going to add it to the manual campaign because it aligns with the goal that we set up. From there, it's going to spend a lot of days in this campaign gathering data, getting impressions and clicks. We're going to find now that women's raincoat is actually getting a lot more hits, a lot more sales. We want to move that to phrase. So we're just looking at women's raincoat exclusively as a phrase and not adding women's raincoat as a broad, opening you up for kind of risk on random search terms. From there, now we're starting to see that people are being a lot more specific with their search, because they are coming to that keyword that has the root women's raincoat, but now they're searching orange women's raincoat. So you want to be able to capture that search term and add that as an exact match type. And the reason why you want to go from broad to phrase and phrase to exact, as you go up the hierarchy, you're actually becoming a lot more competitive for that keyword. There's going to be less searches that can match to that keyword. So if you look at broad as an example, there's hundreds, maybe thousands of variations of search that would match to the broad term women's raincoat. as opposed to just having the exact term orange women's raincoat. You're only going to get the search that is that exact phrase.
Right, and it just gives you so much more control when you're bidding. So if you're moving from broad to phrase and phrase to exact, you know exactly what you're bidding on, and there's just a lot less risk for overspending on terms that don't work because you're consistently taking those winners and moving them down the funnel into these exact matches.
Right. There's actually a few really good questions in here. Laura just asked, is it best to put manual phrase and exact terms in the same ad group?
Sure. I mean, it's up to you what strategy you want to employ, but it's absolutely fine to have multiple match types in the same ad group. They're, again, like we talked about earlier, they're not going to compete against each other. And if it makes it easy for you in terms of maintenance, they can go right side by side in the same ad group. So step 4. So we've talked about eliminating waste through negative keywords. We talked about capturing those top performers, going from automatic to manual. And then once we're in manual, going from broad to phrase and phrase to exact. So that entire workflow around keywords is really important. And we recommend you're in there doing those changes at least once a week. On top of all of that is going to be continuous bid adjustments based on your objectives. So what you can do here, again, you can take advantage of the bulk upload and download feature where you can take a download of all of your performance, and we recommend looking at a 30-day window.
Yeah, and I do want to go to the audience because we have like 4 or 5 questions that I'm kind of honing over here.
Awesome.
I'm like itching to get them out. So the first one is, how do you know what to bid when you move to the manual campaign? So first off, we go through the process. You're picking out those winners. Before you even adjust up or down, what is my bid that I set at to even begin this process?
So there's a couple different strategies here. One, you can look at what that cost per click actually was and what it was costing you on the automatic side. And if it worked well and your cost per click was 30 cents, make sure you're bidding above that amount. Make sure you have a gap there. So if you're bidding, it's costing you 30 cents, make an initial bid of 50 cents or more if you know that it converts into sales. The other point is you can take advantage of the default bid at the ad group level. So if you're continuously making bid adjustments based on your objectives and you're adjusting bids not just for keywords but also for ad groups based on their performance, you can inherit that ad group level bid for the keywords you're moving over.
Interesting. And then another question I want to answer is, if a keyword is working well, in this case it's profitable ACOS for me, have you seen customers improve their marketing execution by increasing their bid? Or if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. I think that aligns exactly with this strategy, and the whole point behind increasing and decreasing bids is you want to be where the customers are converting for your product. So in this case, if your product or your keyword continues to convert well at a low ACOS, spend more, outspend your competition, and get to a spot on Amazon that converts well for you.
Right. So it's all about making sure you have a clear understanding of your objectives and what your targets are for each campaign. And if you're getting sales below that rate, increase your bids. Make sure you're never letting your bid constrain your growth, and don't let it stop you from getting more impressions and clicks and sales.
And the beauty of constantly changing your bids weekly, lowering and increasing, you are going to get to a threshold where maybe increasing it too much does have a negative effect, and you do start to see an increase in ACOS. In that case, you're going to lower it a little bit. It's a constant market. Everything's changing all the time.
Right.
So you have to be very fluid and make changes to your bids that align with your strategy and your goals.
Yeah, and that just begs the question then. Amazon has this suggested bid right there on your Seller Central account, and we've gotten a few questions about that too. So Amazon perhaps is suggesting something like for example, 50 cents for a bid, you're currently paying 30 cents. Does that mean you should adjust up to 50 cents? And the answer is maybe, but I would take that with a grain of salt and evaluate primarily based on performance. The range that Amazon is going to give you is simply based on what the people on page 1 are bidding, right guys?
Yeah, so rarely are you going to spend that actual bid
Right.
amount.
It's a max bid, right? So you're saying I'm willing to spend X amount, but your cost per click is actually less than that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and for the most part, Amazon is going to give you suggested bids. It's a great proxy to go by, of course, but if you're going to manage to be profitable, you have to use the data to inform if it's a right or wrong decision to be increasing or decreasing bids. A $1 suggested bid from Amazon may not align with what your strategy is. You may even say that $2 has to be your bid because you're doing a product launch. So always go back to your strategy and data when making these decisions.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It's just using the data to make informed decisions. Don't simply click select all on the suggested bids and execute it that way. Look at how it actually performs for you, and is it delivering the ACOS that you need? And if not, make those changes. So rounding it out on step 4 here, this slide's been up for a little while, but we never actually walked through the 2 points. So if your ACOS target, if your ACOS is less than your target, we talked about this, increase your bid. Don't let that bid stay where it is if it's performing well for you. Make sure you're going to capture all the related impressions and clicks. And then if you see an ACOS that's above your target, if you see something that has a 50% ACOS and you need to be in 20% range to be profitable, decrease that bid. It's not a winner take all system, and that's what I talk with a lot of sellers about, is that just because you're not on the first page doesn't mean you're not going to see a benefit from sponsored products. So by lowering your bids, you're going to be testing out different placements through sponsored products, and you may find that by paying less, you're still going to pick up some incremental sales, and that those will be profitable for you.
Sure.
Yeah, there's some questions coming in super quickly. People are wondering, how much should I invest, right? So how should they evaluate how much they should change their bids by?
Yeah, and similarly, the question is asking about how much time and how much dollars do I put into this to assess if it's working. And I think from a time perspective, we always recommend using as much data as possible. So if you do start a campaign today, don't start making changes tomorrow. Amazon does have that window of 2 to 7 days for them to attribute a sale coming from sponsored products. So keep that in mind. I think using as much data as possible is what you really need to strive for. And then from a dollars perspective, that's going to be more of a personal thing for you. How much are you willing to spend before turning things off? But always go back to the time and use as much data as possible. I think a couple of weeks is a good proxy to look at.
Yeah, just as Mike said, there's going to be a lot of noise day to day. And if you look like intraday at your numbers in Campaign Manager, you'll see that there's going to be spend with no sales associated with it. And that's just because there hasn't been time for Amazon to attribute those sales to that spend. So don't make those hasty decisions of turning something off after a few hours. It just hasn't had a chance to reconcile all of the sales data. So yeah, look at least a 2-week window before you start making changes. But then moving forward, you can have a trailing 30-day period that you decide is the right number for you to be making decisions on.
Yeah, so here we are at the end. Nice key takeaways to kind of wrap everything and tie the most important parts of this presentation together. So first and foremost, we covered this right at the beginning. Again, we recommend advertising your entire product catalog. Then after you've been able to see how they run using that data that we've consistently honed in on today, you can evaluate the performance and decide to, advertise some SKUs and then maybe pause other ones. The next big thing was running both automatic and manual campaigns with that mirrored structure. So you can easily transfer over those highly performing automatic customer search terms to that manual campaign using that explore and exploit strategy.
And I just want to tie one last question in here with the campaign structure and creating ad groups. The question is, what is the limit to the amount of keywords that I can have in an ad group to still receive impressions? So you can add up to 1,000 keywords. There is a question about hearing that having more than 10 keywords in an ad group does have an effect on the searchability. That's not going to be true. So you can add up to 1,000 keywords per ad group. And like we said earlier, Amazon's going to prioritize the best keyword that you have to offer and match it with the customer search to ease the checkout for the customer.
Right. Everyone's aligned here to get products into customers' hands, right? So it's under Amazon's best interest and your best interest to serve the customer with the product they're most likely to convert with.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. And then I would argue that this third point is the most important thing that we talked about today, was continuously adjusting your bids based on performance. You need to make sure that you're investing in what's working well, divesting, I guess is the word, and what's not working well. So you can reallocate those funds into what is converting for you, and that's the primary goal here. You want to make sure that you are honing in on what's working. And then the last thing is, first and foremost, taking that sponsored products bulk file and making changes in bulk to simplify your life a whole lot, rather than having to go in, add SKU by SKU if you have hundreds of them in Seller Central. It will just streamline your processes so much. And I know from personal experience, having to import things has simplified my time working with sellers weekly. So I don't know if you guys can verify, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it gets back to having yourself set up for success through a clean and just a clean campaign structure, making sure that you know what's in each campaign, what ad groups are under there, your naming conventions make sense, you're not just calling it ad group 1, those default values, then it's hard to take advantage of these bulk uploads and downloads because you don't know what you're looking at. So making that initial investment into having a campaign structure that works, it's going to make it really easy each week to then go back and go through the playbook of eliminating wasted spend, moving things from automatic to manual, continuing to refine targeting on the manual side, and then on top of all of that, adjusting your bids based on performance. So we encourage you to get into that cadence each week. Once you've established your foundation in your campaign structure, making those changes each week is really important because it's such a dynamic marketplace. There's new people coming in all the time, and it's an auction. So if you're not doing this stuff each week, your competitors are, and they'll beat you to those top keywords. Any other questions, guys?
No, I think that last one is a great point on, beating your competition. Sponsored products really does give you that leg up on the game to put your products where others can't, because maybe your sales rank is low. This does give you the opportunity to get in front of the masses of audience members on Amazon.com.
And if you're not doing it, the advantage for you, if you're following these easy steps, you're going to have a huge leg up on your competition. Because there's a lot of questions out there of how should I be managing this? A lot of people don't have the time. So if you set up this foundation for success and go through the weekly playbook, you're going to have a huge leg up.
Amazing. Everybody, thanks again. We're just at time, just under 4 o'clock here on the East Coast. As always, it's been just a pleasure to spend some time with everybody. I hope it was valuable. The topic is complex. We're here to help. As you know, we've been dealing with sellers for many years, and just excited to have everybody on the phone and hope everybody was found some value here. I do want to call out a new series that we're introducing. So generally speaking, the webinars and roundtables that we perform are educational. That's what we're about. So we'll continue that. So our next educational webinar will be on May 10th. But the new series that we're introducing is actually going to be a product demo. So we're actually going to have Joe Doobie and some folks in the room walking through our sponsored products optimizer. So it's software that we've spent the last 9 months building, and does definitely help you manage your sponsored products campaign. So if you're interested in that, we'd love to have you there, and then we'll see you on the 26th for the demo, and then we'll also hope to see you on May 10th for the Running a Profitable FBA Business educational roundtable. So everybody, thanks again for attending, and again, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.